All right. Throw in the chat if you can hear my voice and see my screen. All right. Actually, I don't know if that means you can see my screen. I don't know if that's what sup is. Yeah, +1. Okay, good morning, everyone. On the East Coast, it is on the East Coast of North America, that is. It is 9:16 a.m. and I still have my morning voice, and I have my tea next to me, which is now routine for our streaming. So today we are going to build a new feature into Alpine called xbind. So if you're not familiar with xbind in Vue or vbind, well, I guess we already have xbind. Ha! This is funny. This is so funny. You shouldn't tweet when you just woke up. Oh man. Well, anyway, xbind exists, but you currently pass it a modifier like xbind value and then specify something as a JavaScript expression. In Vue, when you're using vbind and you do this, you can leave out the modifier and you can pass in an object of properties and values. I don't remember the exact syntax. I think it's just something like this. You can just bind like value to hey. I think that is the syntax that would work. So why don't we actually pull up the Vue.js docs? Vue vbind. We're going to do something a little bit different because this is born out of a need that Adam Wathan had for, here it is. We can pass an object to vbind to dynamically toggle classes. Okay. Yep. So we're going to I don't know where we're going to end up today. The technology behind this is simple. I think that's going to be the easy part. It's the API that I want to make sure we get right, because we're not going to mirror Vue.js exactly. For example, in Vue, when you're using vbind, I don't think there's any way to bind or any way to have a substitute for vmodel. So if you did vmodel value, you couldn't do something like model value. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so in Alpine, Adam is proposing something like xbind so that he can create a reusable, component, like UI components, like for instance modal or dropdown in Tailwind, and use Alpine, and then only export a function that people can then use to write their own markup. So they could do something like this. If they wanted to have a dropdown, they would have a button, and let's say, well, normally the button would be like @click show is equal to not show, and then this would be x data show is equal to false to start out with, and then this would be some div that is the actual modal body, and then on this you would have x show like this. That would be a basic modal component the way you would normally write it in Alpine, but what Adam's proposing is that he is able to do something like this. So this would be modal or something along those lines, and this would be @click. No, this wouldn't be @click anymore. You could just do this, xbind trigger, xbind dialog, or body, or something like that. Maybe this is modal trigger or modal trigger. I don't know. But that's the idea, is that he could create these reusable components, and these would contain the instructions to add an @click and an xbind. Oh, I got to get this chat going on my screen. You guys could have been saying lots of things. Let me pop out the chat. Noob mistake. Okay. By the way, hi everybody. I didn't give a warm welcome. I think I'm just off this morning. I had half a Nutella waffle. My wife made a big waffle, slathered Nutella all over it, and put fruit on it, and it is delish. Thanks Octan for the code editor props. Hey. Yeah, a lot of friendly, familiar faces in here. Adrian Musafar. Nice. Cool. All right. 38 people. Wow. Okay, Ryan's been doing the same thing with a hacky custom directive thing, similar to how Spruce does the X subscribe directive. Gotcha. When will you stream with cam on? That's a good question. I actually tried to do it this morning. I thought I should do that. And I couldn't figure it out in the 2 minutes I tried on OBS. I mean, here's OBS. I see video capture device right here, but I don't know anything about OBS. So I kept trying to drag it onto the screen and it didn't work. So I guess I'm just not advanced enough to be able to share my face, but one day. David, how's it going, buddy? We need the suspenseful intros like the Surge videos. I know. Thanks, Colin. All right, so let's keep programming. So maybe I do this normally. It's a lot uglier, but let's see. What do I do? I'm going to put this in the corner, and then I'm going to put that chat pop out, I suppose, so that I can see it all the time. Maybe I'll minimize that window. Yeah, I think that's about as good as we're going to do. Click on the settings thing on the pane under the sources bit. Let's see, do I want to tackle this right now? Let's try it. Click the settings thing on the pane under the sources bit. Here's sources, here's the settings thing. I click it, this is the settings thing that I'm clicking, and then nothing's happening. What does this do? Oh no. Okay, phew. Thought we weren't going to get that back in. While the camera is selected. Aha. Yeah, so I did this as well. But what do you do with that? You know, I click it. I don't see my face, for one. It's got the right webcam here. And then if I hit OK, it does nothing. That's what I did. So, anyhow. Duncan, you can keep throwing stuff at me if you're interested. You can also not. Okay. So let's do some work here. If we see, this is the thing about this full bleed VS Code thing. Oh man, computer's broken. What did I just do? You can drag text. I just dragged text. See, this is the thing about being fancy. Okay. Oh, you know what? Oh, look at this. Sweet. This is a good setup. Look at me. Oh, well, maybe your webcam is broken. Yeah, that's possible. Remove and re-add cam? Nah, not worth it. Maybe add resource already used camera? Yeah, not confident it's going to work. I kind of like this. This is nice. Very nice. Okay, so back to business. Here's how you would write a little modal component in Alpine. 54 watching. Sheesh McGeesh. Are you planning on live streaming Livewire work? Yeah, I don't know. I basically worked on Livewire all week. And so I feel like I need to give Alpine some love, which is why I'm doing that right now. I'm going to stream Livewire work at some point, but I don't know. I am enjoying the work I'm doing alone, to be honest. When I stream, I'm slower. I generally produce better code, I think. I don't know. But I can't go as deep. I can't wrap my brain as deeply around stuff. And I find that I need to wrap more deeply around Livewire stuff these days than Alpine at the moment. Or maybe let's get coding. Oh, Brian, you're so passive aggressive. Use FaceTime Cam if on MacBook. The new 2K stars in the repo is helping I manage. The new 2,000 stars in the repo, is that how many? Yeah, Evan, you tweeted about Alpine this week. It's pretty sweet. Okay, so let's do this thing. So here's the end goal. We want to be able to do something like this. We want what would have been this before to now be this. So I'm actually going to, let's make this our little example here. We're going to comment out everything else on this page. Okay. And now we're using Alpine. Let's get an Alpine build going. So we're on a master branch. Let's check out a new branch. Git pull. What am I pulling? Oh, I did merge a bunch of pull requests. Okay. Git stash. Let's see, what do I have in here? Yeah, git stash. Now git pull. Now git stash pop. Okay. And now we're going to make a new branch. Git checkout, new branch. Add x bind. Okay. And we'll also get an npm build going in this other tab. Oh, I have never seen this icon in my entire life. What is that? Extensions want to make the following changes to the terminal environment. Huh, this feels like it's new. I don't like it. Passive aggressive me? Who, me? Yes, Brian. Okay, great. So we have our build. Okay, we are ready. Let's open this up in a browser. And I guess I need a Chrome window here. So let's do that. Alpine examples, and we'll make this the same width here so that I can still see the chat. Oh, moving windows, so hard. Okay, so the button has nothing in it, but here's it. Here's the first one. First one works great. We got to make this look a little bit nicer. And let's do this. So we're going to have a horizontal rule between the two, and the button is going to say toggle. All right, so now we have toggle modal on and off, and then toggle does nothing for this modal body here. So we want to be able to make this work. The question is, what is modal? That's the first question. So let's create a script tag, and then we'll have a function called modal that returns a data object, and this is standard Alpine stuff, where we could, return show is false and stuff like that. So we're still going to need that show. So we'll say show is false. But now we're going to need a way, we're going to need that trigger first, and then we'll decide what that's going to be in a second. And we're also going to need dialog. Okay. Now what is this going to be? What is trigger going to be? This is the object that we're X binding. So if we look back at the view docs, this vbind, where is it? Where's the vbind spread here? Oh my gosh. I was showing you vbind with a class binding. I am just not firing on all cylinders this morning. Let's see, is there a way to quickly see object syntax, array syntax with components binding inline styles? No. Binding HTML classes? No. Not classes and style binding. We want like attribute bindings, vbind. Directives vbind, that's probably what we want. So vbind object without argument, that's what we're talking about. And let's see, dynamically bind one or more attributes. Nope. When you nope. Still look there. Here it is, right here. Okay, binding an object of attributes. So this is simple enough that you can just make the key the attribute, and then the value the ID of it. But this doesn't handle listeners, and the new Vue 3 is going to handle listeners. So actually, I don't know if Adam Wathen is on. He said he might join. Adam, if you're on, if you could link to where we can look at Vue 3's vbind stuff, or anybody else, if you can dig around and find Vue 3's new vbind syntax, that would be fantastic. Thank you, Ryan, for sending that over. Passing properties of an object, that's probably a better page for this. Yeah, so here it is. Interesting. Okay, vbind post. So you can say ID, right, and these are just the properties. So it's super simple, but we're going to do something more complex than that. Porzio, here you go. Here we go. Come on, Wath, man. It is not really obvious, but there's a paragraph at the end of that spot. Got it. Is there a link I'm missing? I don't see a link, Adam. Maybe he telegrammed it? Nope. Okay. YouTube chat doesn't like links. Yeah, maybe telegram it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, it's dumb. Okay, so here is, all right, so this is an RFC, and there are two globally reserved props, key and ref. In addition, you can hook into the vnode lifecycle using reserved on vnode. Okay, what is this? Interesting. He's saying that's the relevant sentence. Due to the flat structure. Due to the flat structure, this dot attributes inside a component now contains any raw props that are not explicitly declared by the component. Got it. Yep. Okay. This is in like Blade now. This is money sign attributes. This attribute, whatever's left over that's not a prop, including class style, on listeners. Okay. Gotcha. So before, if you've ever done attribute forwarding and listener forwarding, you had to do x bind this dot attrs, and then you had to do x hyphen on and pass in this dot money sign listeners, I believe. And you now no longer have to do that. It looks like both the bindings and the listeners come through in this attributes thing object. So on is the prefix. So vbind on click something works now. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. That's the only real important point here. Got it. Makes much easier to wrap components. Simply pass this dot attributes down with, yes, that is much easier. That is much nicer. And that's very good. Yeah, basically that's the bit of code, Ryan. So the question is, the thing that I'm torn between is, let's see, like when deciding this API, so xbind is a convention. We're using xbind. I like it. There's no new API for someone to learn. I mean, there is a new API for someone to learn, but it's sort of already an established thing. So I feel good about that name. But the contents of xbind, here's the big question. The big question is, do we just do what Vue does, where you can do something like this? Trigger, and then this would say, what would this be? Yeah, this would be a binding itself. Oh, interesting. So this is, because in Vue, this is really less meant to pass directives down than it is to just pass like HTML attributes and the occasional, prop and listener, where we have bigger needs here than just this. So toggle, right? So toggle is the listener. So let me stick with this. Let's say on click. Yeah, on click. And then in here, we would need to pass in an expression that would be this dot show equals not this dot show. And then on dialog, we would be, see, here's the thing is we're doing an X show. And I don't think you could bind that in Vue. You would have to bind like a class object that has like a hidden attribute, right? Like you wouldn't be able to do in Vue. There's no way to bind vShow. And that's what we want. We're interested in a way to kind of encapsulate all of the Alpine attributes into this vbind object so that you can create these nice little reusable things, which I'm in favor of, because my sort of dream for all of this, I have a hard stance against third-party libraries that ship styling like out of the box, under the hood, I should say, so that something like super common in date pickers and select pickers and those are things that actually warrant it a little bit more. There's a whole class of things that don't warrant it as much. That's just kind of frustrating that it is that way. But inevitably, if you care about your design, you have to change the design of the little JS library that you pull in, the date picker or whatever. And then you're just dealing with all these custom classes, and it's very, very frustrating. So my dream is that really what you're downloading is a renderless behavior function thing that's going to give you all the behavior, everything you need to make a date picker. But maybe it'll give you the markup out of the box, like you can just copy and paste it. But then it's up to you to basically maintain that markup. Now that might be a pipe dream. It might actually, in reality, be way too gross to maintain for the average, project. Logic with no predefined markup. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, in a simple example like a modal, this is perfect. I wonder what a date picker would look like, or a select picker. That would be really interesting. But the idea here is that Alpine would give you this xbind affordance so that you could do really powerful things. So we have trigger on click and then dialog. So now this is that question of what do we do for this key? Do we do show? Well, no, because if we do this, it's kind of like in the root global namespace, and we would have to make like every Alpine attribute available, which means if you wanted to forward an actual HTML attribute called show, which whatever, you wouldn't, but there's probably another example that is more likely. If you wanted to forward that, then you would get tripped up. So that feels weird to me, but this would be something like show, maybe just show. That's pretty crazy that it would just, because we called it show. That's why it's whatever. I'll just do this. So show. That's what would happen. So what we're kind of debating is, do we create a separate syntax? Do we change the way that we do we basically change the API and diverge? Is that it from Vue? Yo, James Brooks. Hey, buddy. Do we diverge from Vue's xbind API and do something like this, where literally the key in these bind things here is just Alpine syntax. So any Alpine attribute can be wrapped up in these objects, which I think it's extremely powerful and it is intuitive. The only there's two cons. One, the other one was very data oriented, like, you had real keys and values in a very object-y virtual node feeling thing. And now you have, parsable Alpine syntax as a key, which feels less good. But, so that's con number one. Con number two is that what? Oh, that it diverges from Vue's, established what goes into vbind, But, Alpine diverges from Vue in a good number of ways. So it's always this balancing act and there's no clear answer ever. But yeah, and so the big pro of this is that it's unlimited flexibility for somebody who wants to utilize this. It's xbind Vue.js done corrupted our minds. Adam Wathen, it's xbind Vue.js done corrupted our minds. Gotcha. Well, no, I think Adam was actually referring to vbind from Vue. So yeah, so this is what I think we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna do for now, and I think you would never pass in something without at or x on or x bind or x something, so that in the future we could actually support Vue's stuff with click and on. So that I feel a little bit better about that if we do decide to move in a different direction in the current version, we could technically do it. Not sure we would, but we could. So there's that. And then, so this is pretty much where my head's at right now, is we're going to move forward with this thing where we're going to accept all valid Alpine syntax as keys. The next question is, what are the values going to be? So let's consider something like this. Xshow show. I don't know off the top of my head. Telling you, I'm at half capacity here, half brain capacity. So, or would you do something like this? Would you put an expression in a callback to be evaluated at runtime? Basically, are these always going to be callbacks? And I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is they should always be callbacks. I don't know what would happen if you bound directly to a piece of data. I actually don't know. But I think, for now, we could start with this, that it's just always going to be an expression. So let me know in the chat if everybody's on board with this. Yes, I think, Ryan, I think you're right. That's the part that scares me, is the reactivity. If we're setting, values directly and not having expressions that we can bind our own this context to, basically, and make our own stuff available with the with statement. So tell me, folks, in the chat, if this is the direction you think we should go. This is the direction that I think is, yeah, closure's better. Okay, so keep going in the chat. Let me know if this is where we're gonna head, because then we'll head there. Yeah, I think I need to just talk some of that out. James is with us. All right, so the key is going to be valid Alpine syntax, and then the value is going to be a callback, and that is going to be our definitive API for the initial release of this feature. Speak now or forever hold your feet. Oh man, maybe some smaller head, but I think it's still better. Okay, yep. What does Adam think? Who cares what Adam thinks? Holding my feet. Adam agrees. We've talked about this before. Okie day. Let's get to implementing it. Thumbs up in the chat if you want to if I should TDD it, or thumbs down in the chat. Thumbs down and we'll just jump right into implementing. Thumbs up and we will TDD. Holding my feet too. Looks good to me, says Eldon. TDD for life. I only read thumbs up and thumbs down. I don't know if that... Okay, we got some TDDs. All right. A lot of thumbs up. A lot of thumbs ups. Oh, David's torn. Of course. All right, so let's do it. Let's write our test here. All right. A lot of thumbs up. Okay, so test. Bind looks like the place to do it, huh? Unfortunately, bind is massive because it's a test, it's the test suite for all the different binds. So it'd be kind of nice if we had our own little file. But, we're just going to tack it on to the end because this is where I would look for it, at least right now. Unless there was another bind with a suffix called like bind no attribute, bind object or something. I don't know. But we're just going to add it right here below this test here. Object bind, like that syntax for tests. Yeah, Nuno. Hey, Nuno. Yeah, man. Nuno is he's working on this project called Pest, which is now open source, and it basically brings the Jest testing syntax to PHP, which is so nice because why do you need anything else? Why do you need anything more? All you need is just the name of the test and then a callback to do your thing. So it's a pretty great project. I imagine we'll all be using Pest in at most a year. Rename the current one to binders, maybe pest heart, bind folder, then file per type thing. Yeah, Hugo, that's not a bad idea. Not going to do it right now because I don't want to force everybody to sit here and watch me copy and paste. But no, we need to introduce Nuno. Yeah, it's true. Why, was he here already, or you're just saying because he's so fly? I'm presenting Pest to my team today. Yeah. Yep, Pest is happening. Pest is taking the world by storm. Okay, what are we going to call this thing? We're going to say can bind an object of Alpine directives. So really we're binding directives. We're not binding attributes. So I have to change my mental language. This is directive binding, not attribute binding. Nuno is known across the globe. He is a rock star. Okay, can bind an object of directives. We're already in Alpine, we know that. So we have our X data. Now I think I'm going to actually what if we do the example that we laid out right here? I think that's logical. And you know what? We can actually take this exact function, and this will be kind of this is good. This is good. We're going to create this function right here. Okay. And now the markup is literally going to be the markup that we wrote out. And I'll undo that cut so that we can use it in a browser if we need to. Okay. Whoops. Up, over. Okay. All right. So function modal, and this is, I think this should work. I don't know. Let's do this. Window.modal equals this so that we know it's in the window, which should work here, but I don't know. Just going to do this to be explicit. Window.modal, and now we got the button, we got the thing. Now we start Alpine. So there's Alpine start. And then the first thing we're going to want to do is make sure that that the modal dialog is not showing. Yeah, so you know what? We could do a real inside or outside in test with this. Let's do that. Let's do something like can we do, I would love an assert C. Oh, you know what? That's not going to work because this is always going to be on the page. It's just going to be hidden or shown. So let's go over to the show spec and see how I test show. Yeah, so we make sure that the attribute style is equal to null or display none. So let's grab that. And we don't need to await for this one. So we'll get rid of that. And now we are grabbing the div. So we have a div, a button, and then we'll make this a span. This way we don't have to do anything weird about grabbing specific things. This is a little technique that I use in my Jest test here to basically, so if I get a span out of the, query selector, it's going to be this. I don't have to worry about query selector all and get the second one or some sort of IDs or ref. This is just easier for me. So query selector span get attribute style is equal to display none because xShow is set to false. So this is kind of our first, that's the first thing that we're going to get a failure right now with. And then we want to click a button. So let's do that. Query selector, what's that? Document.querySelector button. Click. Okay. Maybe we need Hugo's Alpine test utils. Yeah, I looked at that. I really should look deeper at that to see if that, is something that would help us in these internal tests. I kind of, I like the fact that these tests are just literally it's just jest. That's it. I don't know if you have to include JS DOM or not, but it's just jest. So it's all super bare metal, which I kind of like. But you know what? We could probably benefit from using, a utility library or something that makes some of these things a little bit easier, especially the part where right now there's this click, but I can't just assert that it's shown now. I have to wait for the internal timeout because Alpine has an internal timeout for specific reasons, like its own little clock inside. And so I have to either await a timeout function, or I have to use Jest's wait helper. So let's do wait for now. Await, wait, and then we'll wrap this inside the wait. I think this is DOM testing utils gives us wait. That's the library by Kent Dodds. Click needs to be at click. Oh, thanks. Where is that? Click needs to be at click. Yep. Okay. Click needs to be at click. And now button click. And then we are waiting for span style to be null. So let's take this, we'll grab this, and then style to equal null. Okay. All right, and that should do it. We're toggling something. I guess, to be thorough, we would click again and make sure that it goes back to display none. So this is our full test to TDD this feature. Hopefully this made it super raw. Wouldn't recommend, says Hugo. To be null. Yeah, I know. I thought about that, to be null. And it's probably better, but I kind of liked seeing this null here. To each his own. I'm not dogmatic about that. I don't have a hard whatever. Shut up, Caleb. Keep going. Okay. So here is our can bind object of directives. Let's run this test and get a nice fat failure. So jest, this is generally how I do it until I create better jest. This is embarrassing. But actually, I think I do have a jest extension in VS Code. But what I do is jest bind -t, kind of like PHP unit filter, and then bind is going to be the file, and then t is I think you can actually use regex, but it doesn't work for me in the command line for some reason. To be or not to be. That's funny. Christian says, interesting to see how the unit tests are being done with this sort of behind the scenes DOM manipulation library. Yeah, I hope you find that the unit tests are surprisingly outside-in-y. These tests are, I'm not doing anything special with Alpine. The only thing you wouldn't do in a real app is alpine.start. That would just happen automatically. But I'm just basically putting a bunch of HTML on a page, interacting with things, and asserting that the DOM is updated. So it's, hopefully it seems pretty straightforward. All right, so our first failure, like we thought, is that xShow never got registered. So we expected to receive display none for the style attribute, but instead we got null. So now we're actually going to do some work. Yes, pest has become available. I'm wondering if we should put this on a watcher so that we're kind of really doing TDD. But honestly, Jest is slower than PHP unit, so I don't do that kind of thing as much. I don't run the tests as often, actually. It's my least favorite thing about Jest is that it's just slow. It's fast with big test runs because it can run tests in parallel. It's wicked fast compared to PHP unit. But individual test runs, it's just not as snappy, which is sad. Okay, so it's time to do something. Let's start with a little tour of where we would actually add this, where I would first think to add this. Inside of utils, well, you know what? Let's go inside of component. The component's the main JavaScript file of Alpine. Each component is a instance of a class called component, and this, if PHP unit is slow, use paratest. Yeah, I've messed with that. I wish PHP unit did it out of the box. Paratest has bit me for some reason. I don't remember why. But anyway, so yeah, here's the component class, and I'm not going to show you the entire thing, but maybe what's worth showing is there's this initialize elements function. This is register all our listeners to set all our attribute bindings. This is the business right here. This is what kicks everything off. Okay. And now in here, we walk the DOM with the root element of this component. We skip the things we need to skip, but if we are not skipping something, we initialize the element. And now in initialize element, this is where we do our thing right here. We register the listeners and we resolve the bound attributes. So let's first look at resolved bound attributes to get this test to pass. So resolve bound attributes. So we use this get x attributes function, which is a function to pull in an element, just a normal HTML element, and return out every attribute that is an Alpine attribute. So x bind is going to fall within that. So we get back attributes, and now let's see if the type is not defined and the type is radio. This is just like a thing to make radio buttons work well. But then we go through these attributes and we look for model, we look for bind. Interesting. Yeah, we look for bind. So here's the decision we need to make. Binding for x4 is special, has attribute. Okay. Resolve bound attributes. Model also uses bind. Yes, that's very true. Right. Yeah, good call. So I was going to say, should we put our logic here or further upstream? And you're right, because model uses bind, we should do it upstream. Yeah. So let's do it upstream. All right. Model also uses bind. Mitchell, Caleb, please, I need to know. Why is your Chrome out of date in every screenshot and live stream? If this is a cry for help, I'm here for you. This is a safe space. Reach out when you're ready. I don't update anything. I can't be bothered. I never close anything and I never update anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, who's got time for that? Not me. All right. I would like to keep this chat window open. Oh, man. You know why I can't do that? Because I have the max setting where if you click on an icon, it hides everything but that thing. I'm a goober. I'm a goofy goober. Yeah. Okay. So this get attributes, here's what we should do. We should, inside of get x attributes, we should look for the bind thing and see if bind has no modifier and that its value is an object. I think. Yes. And then we should basically take that object, evaluate it, and basically spoof all the attributes. So we can basically do this upstream and not have to do much, else. So here's x attributes. We do array.from l.attributes. This is just HTML stuff to get the attributes, get the name and the value. It's like an object of these, name and value objects. If you can't see it, doesn't matter. Caleb Forzio, 2020, proceeds to see glaring red bubble for months. Yeah, I don't even notice it ever. The reason I got so excited about Pest is I would sponsor Nuno, but I can't because we're sanctioned, so I had to wait for him to reach his goal. Got it. Also fair enough. Is class object binding gonna play nice? Should play very nicely. Yeah, if you return the object from an expression. Okay. So we have our attributes, and then here we're doing a filter. So we get all the attributes from the HTML element. Then we filter by this regex. Is x attributes, and here's the regex. And because we're using bind, we already have a regex for it, so we don't have to modify any of that stuff. We filter x attributes, and now here, this is where we're gonna kind of do a little step in the middle, where we're gonna say, we could add it as a separate transformation, but let's do this right now. Let's say if atter.name, actually, we can do all of this, right? Yeah. So we could say, we could do this after we do this. Yes? No? This is tough. See, what we want is a way to do a little check here that says, maybe we need to put this into a separate function. That's probably what needs to happen. Yeah. But this bold will continue to work. Hijack attribute before switch. Hijack attribute before switch. Yes, that's what we're going to do. Okay. So let's do this here for starters. We're going to say if name is equal to bind. If name is equal to bind, and if type, yeah, I think that's right. Type, yeah. Let me think here. Value match. Value, let's see. So expression is this, type type is bind. What's name? Oh, name is just the first chunk. So we're saying if type is bind and value is null, and we're doing this here. So you know what? We should let this go through its thing. Let's do that. And we'll add ourselves a new map. Okay. And this is I right now. I don't know. Maybe I'll consider a better name. It's kind of inconsistent, but I is what's used here. So I guess it's more consistent. If type is equal to bind, and so if I.type, if I.type is equal to bind, and I.value is null, that means that there's no value, and now we can actually get the value of the expression to get a new object to then pass into here, a new object that conforms to the name and the value. This is interesting. This is very interesting. Okay. And modifiers is empty. I don't know if that matters, right? Because that's like, it's just going to be empty. Yeah. I'm not going to worry about modifiers, I don't think, right now. So if type is bind and value is null, then we will return. Yeah, see, what do we do here? Because this needs to be kind of like a flat map to do this inside. So maybe this is a flat map, but I don't know. Can you flat map? I don't think you can. Is there probably is flatten, right? Out of the box with JavaScript. Yeah, I said before seeing where you were going. Premature. No problem. Let's open up a DevTools here and let's see if we have, hey, there, we have our map here and we have flat map. Sweet. So I bet what we need to do here is do a flat map where we loop through, and let's just do this for now. We're gonna be real explicit. Now it needs IE11 polyfill and we don't have it. Do we not? Good call, Ryan. Yeah. And maybe I'm headed down the wrong road here. I don't know. This is kind of a weird thing because within a pipeline, we need to kind of go back to the beginning of the pipeline. So I imagine it's one of those things that has a really good implementation that I'm just not seeing right now, but we're just going to get it to work. But so it does. Dot flat. Ryan, please tell me if we need to add a polyfill or if we're good or if I should be using something else. That would be helpful. Okay. So if it's bind, then we're going to do something fancy. If else, we are going to return, I think we can just return the thing, right? Just return I to just kind of like pass through this. Like, do we need to return this to be part of the flat map? I don't think so. Like, the idea here would be that if we have, say we have an array. So we have hey, there, and then we do dot flat map. Actually we can, yeah. So if we return an array, yeah, it's going to go back to the flat. If we return something singular, it's going to go back to the flat. And if we return both, I imagine it's just all going to be flattened. Yep. So this is perfect. So flat map, basically we're going to return the thing if it's just normal. And then if not, we'll mess with this to make it a little bit more readable. And if not, we're going to extract this into a function and parse it. So let's say return parse. What are we going to say? Return parse HTML attribute. Parse HTML attribute. Yeah, parse HTML attribute. That seems pretty good, right? Parse HTML attribute into X attribute. Yeah. Now let's start with this. And then we're going to make this a function here. We're not going to export it yet. And then this is where parse HTML attribute, where like, what do? Do we pass in, like we can just pass in an object that has name and value. And then we can do this whole business here. So then we can reuse this. Parse HTML attribute, we pass in name, and then name and then value, because that's what attribute is going to be. And then we got our stuff here, so good. Parse HTML attribute. So now in this map, we are going to do a parse HTML attribute here. Then we're going to be like, hey, is it bind with no type thing? Yes. Then we're going to want to actually do that again. And this time, name is going to be equal to bind. No. Wait a second. Name. Yeah, I'm confused. I need to think. Think. Right. So I.value, we need to evaluate I.value into an object of key value pairs and do a map on that, right? Yeah. So what are we going to call this? Rename me equals, and now here we're going to do I.value. So value is the expression. So just so we're all tracking here, because I imagine some people maybe are a little bit lost. What we're doing, type is bind, and value is, in our case, it's the object that we're doing that spread on, that we're, applying. It's the xShow, callback thing. Yeah. So what we need to do is actually evaluate this object, which we evaluate things with safer eval, and then we pass in an expression, a data context, and additional helper variables. So the expression is going to be I.value, and the data context, do we need a data context? We probably do. Safer eval, we need a data context because that's going to be our money sign data. Do we need a data context? I feel like we don't. We don't, because we're just, so what if I don't, okay, the data context is going to be an empty array or an empty object. That's what it's going to be. An empty object, and that's it. Because we're just evaluating a plain JavaScript object with expressions in it. Do we want to eval the I.expression? Oh, yeah. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ryan. I get confused with whether we're working with a raw HTML attribute or with the one we just kind of parsed. So safer eval I expression, evaluate this, and this is going to be our, this is our rename me. So let rename me equals. Now rename me is an object where rename me is an object, yes, where the keys are the names and the values are, So what we're doing, rename me is an array. No, it's an object. So what we need to do is this, object.keys, because in JavaScript, you can't take an object and do for each or map or anything. So you get the keys from the object. So rename me, and let's name this right now. This is, what is this called? This is it's like the new raw, what is this? This is the bind object. This is this is just the bind object. So we'll say bind object. Object for bind? Bind object? Say object of bindings. Yeah. Directives to be bound. Object of directive bindings. Bing bag. Object of directive bindings. I'm cool with that. Okay. Directive bindings. Directive bindings. Perfect. directive bindings. Now we get the keys of the directive bindings, and now we're going to for each through these keys. So what we're getting is the key. Yeah, so for each, this is the key. And what we want to do is, this is actually going to be a map. Get all the keys, and now we're going to map the key into parsing the HTML attribute. And then the key is the name. So name is key, and value is directive bindings key. Anybody tracking this? I know it seems a little weird. I apologize. Oh my gosh, I have a magic button on my keyboard that I hit and it echoes out the model. I don't know why. This is a little bit long, so let's do this. Yeah. Return object.keys, directives binding map, parse HTML attribute, object.entries. Okay, if we do object.entries, we're not going to get the keys, right? And we need the keys. Yeah, but right, we need the key here. So tell me how that works. Is it object.entries? Does it, you get key value? Ooh, let's see. All right, so we have, hey, there, you, yo, dot, entries. What did I do wrong? This, no, not this. That equals, oh, right, duh. Object.entries, that. Okay. And now what this does is gives us an array of the key and the value. What? I thought it only gave you the values. That's fantastic. Oh, I love that you're here. Object.entries, hey dummy. Every time you say that, I picture the what's the guy? The vulture from that show. What show is it? The guy who actually plays like one of those insurance commercials he's on. If anybody knows that reference, I would appreciate you to fill in that reference. Oh my gosh. Yeah, hey dummy, right? Brooklyn Nine-Nine. That's it. Yep. The vulture. Object entries, directives bindings, dot. Okay, so now we have entries and of directive bindings. And now if we map them, we can, what? Can we just do this? It's not an object, so we need to kind of massage it into an object. Right? Like, is this any better? So it basically, this is like thing dot, how does this work? Key value. All right, help me out. Oh, key value. So we could say name and then value, right? Because we decide what these are going to be, and these are going to be name value. So we could do, this. These are the kind of things that confuse the hell out of people. Yeah. All right. Is this what we want? Yeah. All right. We get these, we pull a name value, and we pass it in as an object of name and value. That's what we want, right? Okay. And then otherwise, we just return I. Then everything gets flat mapped. Then it goes through the rest of the app like normal. All right. Moment of truth. First test. Well, our test isn't going to, I have a parser problem here. Parse HTML attributes, name value. What's wrong here? Okay, we have identifier name has already been declared. Name, oh, I'm reassigning name. Well, name is kind of bad anyway. This is like first half, really. And then value is second half. So name is, what would we call this? Attribute name. We want this, but not this, and this, and this, and this is going to be attribute, say raw attribute name equals, oh shoot, I just reversed it. This is name, this is raw attribute name. So this is going to be parsed name. Yeah. So parsed name. Yep. Parsed name, right? Wait a second. Replace at and colon with standard syntax. This is going to be normalized name. That's what it is. Name, const name. Okay, this is good. Yeah. I mean, I could have just gotten rid of the const, but I didn't want to do that because I felt like we were reassigning it to something else. We might as well name it accordingly. And then value stays value. Okay, so we're building the bundle. We're going to run our jest test. And we're going to see what's up. All right, we get a failure, but, oh, and it was actually in the same spot. Can bind an object of directives. So this is interesting. Oh, here's the problem. The problem is, let's see what our error message is. Yeah, trigger is not defined. Okay, unhandled promise rejection. This error originated either by throwing inside of async function without a catch. I don't know, but the problem is that the value is now instead of a string. So expression is usually a string, but now expression can be a callback, you know? Or like expression is usually just the string that we parse later on, and now it's actually a callback. So expression should really be, yeah, expression should maybe not be called expression. It should be called like, well, it is the expression. Because a callback is still an expression, right? Like I kind of think of it like an expression. Well, the expression, it's a callback of an expression. So maybe we'll leave it as expression for now. But now we've made one thing be two things, which is makes life harder, which means do we could convert all expressions to, interesting. So what if we converted all the expressions up front to a callback? See, the thing is I use the with stuff for magic stuff to do magic things. You know what? Interesting, Hugo. I kind of dig that. Should we just convert the expressions up front? I wonder if there's, I mean, they have to be run eventually, so I can't imagine that we're incurring an extra cost. Interesting. What if we did that up front? Huh. Right? No need to do it later on. I guess the only thing is, here's the thing that this would change. If you modify an expression with something, like maybe you manually go into a browser like the DevTools and manually change an expression, Alpine will still work because it's going to parse the expression as it needs it, you know? Where if we do all the parsing up front, if we parse while we're parsing, then we're sort of locking the component into that expression, which I think, you know, it's one of those gray areas because it does make sense. Like, I think if we did it this way, even if we broke something, I think we could kind of get away with, well, yeah, we never promised that we would support, you know, you being able to literally change an expression at runtime. But I don't want to remove runtime evaluation from Alpine, at least in this version. I think that's too big of a behavioral change, for my comfort, at least. So I think we're left with the option of, do we make expression both a string and a callback at the same time? Or do we make a separate key called expression callback, which is easier? And basically it's the difference of, are we going to do type checks to see if it's a string or a function, you know, downstream in this code base? Or are we going to check for the existence of an attribute over another? And it's kind of equivalent, right? One's just a little bit more expressive than the other. I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts. Yeah, so expression to string. Don't want to do that. Adam recommended that, or Adam at least was like, hey, what if we did this? And it's no bueno because right, so that works, but you know what? Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's just different because, like however they define that function, it's going to be different. You know, like if they use like the function word, then if we intend to parse it, this is a no-go. If we don't parse it and we put it into a new evaluation string, it could be a go, which is kind of interesting. But I don't know. I don't know if I just don't know. I don't know. There, I said it. I don't know. I'm just nervous about that, I guess. But I guess, okay, so let's say that we parse it into a string. Yeah, I just feel like that's one of those things that I'm just basically setting ourselves up for failure. I don't know. Yes, that's true. All right, I think we have some decisions to make here. But we're going to keep moving forward. Let's move forward with this expression being two different things. And now I'm curious to see the places where we use expression. So we do a lot of expression parsing inside of the transition utility. Yeah, we do that. So does this mean that it's just not going to work with transitions? I don't know. We'll get to that in a minute, I guess. Expression equals string plus expression. Yeah, it moves far. I mean, it's the same thing, like coercing expression into a string. You know, if we convert everything, if we convert everything into expression, we're locking ourselves into not being able to evaluate at runtime, which we don't want. If we convert these functions to a string and then run them, tough. Let's stick with the two different types thing. The one question I have is I use the expression as a string here to do some parsing, you know, of the different classes. So like a class directive. And this is going to be interesting when we get there, but we'll just ignore it for now. And here's some places we use the expression. Evaluate return expression, we pass in expression. Evaluate return expression, we pass in expression. So it's possible that we may be able to just skip right to the evaluate return expression here. So, or say for eval and say for eval no return. So these two places is where we can now do our thing. So expression is now a callback. So we can say if expression type of, or no, what is it? If type of expression is equal to function, then we're going to do our own thing here, which I think, yeah, we did something similar. We did something similar here, that if it's a function, yeah. So if it's a function, then expression dot call with the data context, and now additional helper variables. Yeah, we're not going to do that. But what are we doing with additional helper variables? Let me think about this. Because we will need with, right? If we're passing in additional helper variables to the evaluated expression. Oh boy. Let me think about this. Think. What do we do? Are these available, these additional things? I think not, because they have the data context, so they can do this dot. So that's what we're doing. We're just going to do this. This may just work. Okay. Say for eval no return, we're going to do the same thing. And now, what's this? Data context includes expression. Oh, right, because if you're passing in something directly. Okay, so we're going to put both of these up front. And, yeah. Okay, giddy up. Giddy up. All right, we built it. We run the test. And we see how we're living. Okay, fail. Why did we fail? So trigger is not defined. I wonder if this is what's getting us down here. So where are we getting triggered? So this is the point where it's hard for me to debug with the test feedback loop. So, oh crap, I just closed the chat window. Sorry. Let me open that back up. Let me get this here chat window here opened. How do we do that? Pop out. Come on. Pop out chat. All right. So it's hard for me to debug in Jest. It's just not a great flow. So this is where I'm glad that we actually have a version of this in the browser, because the browser is just so much easier to debug. So now we can look at what the browser is telling us for errors. So trigger is not defined. See for eval. So let's maybe dig. All right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to pause on exceptions. We're going to refresh, and now it's going to pause our runtime at that point in time. And we can kind of look back in the call stack and see what's happening here. So we're parsing the HTML attributes thing. And now we're running an anonymous function of directive bindings. So directive bindings is undefined. If I step forward, why did it skip? Something happened. What happened? I don't know what happened. Oh man. Well, that was weird. Okay. With block. Alpine result equals trigger. Trigger. Yeah, okay, let's think about this. So back to this page here. We have trigger, and now we're saying xbind trigger. And we need to evaluate it in the context of the component. Yeah, so when we're doing our initial utils get x attributes, and then we do this thing here, when we evaluate this, we're going to be referencing data on the object. So we need to evaluate it. Oh, Matt's streaming today? Okay. Thank you, Musafar. So Matt streams at 11, right? So we're definitely going to be done by 11 so that everybody can go watch Matt's stream. Yeah, and I might maybe cut this short so that I don't like tire everybody out and then at 11 they don't want to go to Matt's stream. Okay, so let's see. So this is what we need to do. We need the data context of the component. And so how do we get that? We can pass it into getX attributes. Maybe that's what needs to happen, but then, yeah, we have to pass it everywhere, which we could use the DOM to like crawl up the DOM for an X data and get the data, but I don't like that as much. So I did a bunch of this already with Adam. We did like a quick pair session, and I feel like I'm retracing all our steps, but I wanted to start fresh so that I could, really understand. All right, so yeah, and now we want component dot data. Fresh is good, says Jason McCreary. Hey, Jason. Yes, very good. So we're passing component now into getX attributes. And I wonder, can we do that everywhere that we use getX attributes? Good question. So let's see the places that we use it. We use it a lot we use it in the transition stuff. So we're going to need it there. And then, but maybe we can, do some of that work upstream and not need to pass it as deeply. That'll be kind of a question. GetX attributes, transition, L transition, attributes, show attribute. Yeah, it's tough because it's just tough. Because now X attributes is always going to be doing an eval, right? Which is just not, I don't know. It's like something we're not doing right now. So it makes me feel weird. All right, so X attributes, I guess we use in some for loop stuff, which here is fine. We have access to the component context inside of this for thing. And we also have access to it inside of the if thing. Yeah, it's almost like what? Like maybe we need, like we could introduce some caching or something so that we're only spreading X bind initially and then not evaluating it after the fact. I'm wondering, are we making Alpine slower because now an operation that previously only required just parsing the DOM is now actually evaluating an expression with a runtime eval. And runtime evals are slow. They're not, deal-breakingly slow, if that's a word. Sometimes they are. They can be. And I'm introducing that, and I feel weird about it. So I'm wondering if there's a way, because these are all runtime checks. These are all checks at runtime. I don't know if I see a way around it, though. So what's going on here is, there's a lot of places I use get X attributes to say, hey, does this component have an if attribute on it? So in this example, when you have X4, this is what this does. If you have X4 on something and you have X if on that same thing, I want to evaluate the if statement first, because if the if is false, we don't need to do the X4 at all. This is why I say if attribute. So if the if attribute is present, so I'm doing an eval here, so it's already kind of slower than just parsing. It's like if attribute is present and it's false, then just skip the X4 by returning an empty array. This is that behavior. So, all right, we'll just keep passing it through, and then I guess we'll settle up later. So these are good now. The utils are bad because we're going to need to pass stuff. We're going to need to pass component in all these get X attributes calls. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 of these. And then we're going to need to pass component. Now, component doesn't get passed in here, so transition in is going to be lshow component and then for skip. So this can be lshow component for transition in, and then transition out is going to be lhide component. And now transition in, wherever we define that or wherever we call that here. Now when we call transition in, we need to also pass in the component. We have the context, it's just that we weren't needing to pass it as deeply before. And it's just kind of a smell, when you have to take something and pass it to every single thing. But this is one of the consequences of functional, at least for me, this is what I feel is a consequence of functional approach for a lot of things. No IDE refactoring. Yeah. This is one of the times where not using an IDE makes me look like a goober, which, VS Code is decent with JavaScript. So it's possible that, should we try it? Let's try it. We should try it. We tried. It's buggy. Yeah. I feel like we did, right? We did. Anyway, let's find the transition in. Yeah. So transition in, here we'll go to utils, and now we'll do transition out. Does not currently accept component. So if we do, let's see, refactor, is that what to do? See, I don't even know. How do you just change a parameter? Move to a new file? No, right? Yeah, see, this is just refactoring things out. How would you, I don't even know. Is this possible to do? I don't know. You'd have to let me know that, how would you do a global refactor for a new parameter? Because it would require changes all over the place. How would it know what you would want to pass in? Is that something that, joking, move on. Yeah. All right. So back to where we were. Transition in. So transition in and transition out are going to need components. Basically everywhere that we do this transition in and transition out, we are going to pass in component. So we have transition in here. We're already passing it in there. And the if statement, we need to pass it in here. So component, okay. And then on show, we are also transitioning in. And again, it's possible that there's a refactor that makes this nicer so that we don't have to like pass this around everywhere. Okay, and then transition out. Okay, transition out is accepting component. Transition out needs to be passed component. Transition out needs to be passed component before initial update. All right, and then show is our last one, and then we'll see what we got going here. Okay. All right, moment of truth. So try it in the browser first. All right, we are hitting a debugger problem. Cannot read property money sign data of undefined. So get X attributes, we must be using get X attributes somewhere and not passing in. There's probably a bunch of places. Get X attrs. That, so I guess in the component, doing that in for, so let's make sure that we're passing it in for, and we're passing it in here. Now we just need to do the couple places, what, 3 places here that we're doing that. So get X attributes. Oh, and not component because we're passing in the component. So it's this. Okay. Bundle, refresh. Yep. Cannot read property money sign data of undefined. I believe you are wrong. Oh, so where is this error coming from? On get X attributes, right. So let's go upstream a little bit. Where are we calling get X attributes? Inside register listeners, we're passing in this, which is interesting because that should work. Does anybody see it? Why is this null or undefined? If we are in component and then under register listeners, we should be able to do L and this, but maybe, oh, you know what? Because we need to pass in a type. So let's see. I think I did a bad refactoring. So inside of utils, we have get X attributes. We have L type and component. So interesting, because it's almost like we need L component and type. If type is going to be optional, because type is optional. Where do we use type? We use type down here. If not type, and we check to see if type is undefined. All right, so if I was, because I almost feel like component is the context, it should be the third parameter, you know? So I could do something gross, like, you know, that would be the equivalent. I'll do that right now. Oh, did I do that for everyone accidentally? But it works? I did. Has attribute class, get attributes, dot length. Yeah, I feel like I messed some things up. No? Yeah, that's it. Okay. All right. We're building. We refresh. And hey. Okay, ready? Hey, check it out. Nope, doesn't work. Because the listeners aren't bound yet. But the show works. So in our test here, if we run this test. All right, I'm going to cut this off at 10:45 because Matt's out for streaming at 11 and we should all go watch his stream. So what do we got now? Cannot read property show of undefined. But where is our error? So we got past the other error, hopefully. No, we didn't. Cannot read property show of undefined. Cannot read property show of undefined. Let's go back to that test. And maybe we just forego the test. This is the problem with TDD, especially for front-end stuff. This is very difficult. TDD for the backend for me is, it's my typical way of doing things, but because you're using JS DOM, it's like not the actual, it's not a real browser. So you run into stuff. Yes, JavaScript. So like we just got this to work in the browser, but it's not working in JS DOM because it's saying that it cannot read the property like show. Yeah, and I guess this context just isn't being bound properly for some reason. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know why. Don't we all love it? Yeah, man. Well, we'll get to that later. Maybe it's because, no, I don't know. What do I know? Try without the arrow. Yeah. Oh, yes. Arrow functions and binding. So Adam and I came across this as well. Whoops. So let's say we do this. Yeah, interesting. So it worked in the browser though, right? Or was it just like a false positive? Yeah. Huh. So it actually worked. And it worked with all the listeners and everything as well. Nope. Listener did not fire. Did not fire in the browser, but it worked in the test? You gotta be kidding me. What did I do? Oh, maybe we didn't change it to @click in the thing. Yep. There we go. Yeah, good call, Hugo. Right, this is supposed to work. Why isn't it working? Trigger. Oh, because we still are using. Yeah, right. Okay, so why does it work for the evaluation with the return, but not for the listeners? Anyway, Hugo, do you know anything about this context with a callback? Like, is there any way that we could make it work? Like, how do we do that? There's got to be a way. All right. So xbind works. Is the add event listener binding a different this? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's probably true. So let's go back to, we'll keep the arrow function in the actual HTML version of our test thing. And yes, so the add event listener, that's where, so let's go to component and then register listeners. We get the X attributes, we check for on these two things, and we do the register listenering. So we can go to on.js, and this is where we'll actually have our document.addEventListener. And this is where event and now handler, now that we are sure the element is visible in the click expression, let's run the expression. Run listener handler. Expression is the expression, and what does run listener handler do? Run listener handler, evaluate the command expression. Command expression is a callback, remember. And then evaluate command expression. So let's go to component and then evaluate command expression. Maybe that's it. Maybe that when the listener gets run, because it's a callback, for whatever reason, like straight up .addEventListener maybe is the thing that hijacks our this context or something. But here we have save for eval, no return, dispatch get dispatch function, save for eval, no return. I mean, the difference is the return and the no return. So maybe that, well, let's see. Okay. So utils save for eval. So there's save for eval and save for eval, no return. Save for eval works to our knowledge in a browser. Save for eval, but I don't think it works in JS DOM. So it may be a fluke that it works. Yeah, I think the arrow functions are working for the X show, like if I look at this in the browser, let's see, this will tell us. Yeah. So it is working for the save for eval, but for the save for eval no return, it is not, but it's the same thing. So that's really interesting. So save for eval, no return, we're not even returning. And the actual with stuff, with data context, and then we run the expression. Tough stuff. All right, well, I think we're really close. I think I'm going to close out the stream. I think I'm going to put this inside a pull request. And then I would love it if someone else on here could look at it. And the two things that I'm interested in knowing are, what are the implications with, like, well, three things. What are the, you know what? Let's just open the pull request. Let's just do it right now. Okay, we have that test passing. Let's kill this build. I'll do like a full build right here, and then we'll commit and we'll say add xbind attribute, add basic, implement basic xbind attribute behavior. Okay. You removed add on click. Okay, thanks for the heads up. So maybe it did work? Oh, well, I'll check on that in a second. All right, committed that. And now legit publish, put this on the branch. Oops, not that. Legit publish, okay. This is the type of thing I've seen Simone crush. Open source contributions are critical, send them in. Yes. And we have some all-star contributors on here right now. Adrian, Ryan, Hugo, Simone, like you mentioned, Muzafar. Basically everybody in the chat right now they're consistent contributors to both projects. More Alpine on this chat because it's Alpine stuff, but yes. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you guys saw, I did add a VIP section yesterday. VIP contributors. I'm not calling it a core team because I think there's implications that I don't know what it means, but like Hugo, Ryan, and Simone. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So what are we doing? We're going to create that pull request, and we're also going to check that click thing. So let's create the pull request, and yeah. Add xbind. This is a whip PR. Add xbind. Yes, I feel you, Jason. Unfortunately, this is fantastic. I feel that way a little bit with Livewire, but in both repos, people have stepped up and it's been awesome. That like this is 39. I haven't touched the issues in forever. Like the kind folks on this chat, they basically do all the issue triaging, and then I mostly pay attention to pull requests. I've been trying to get more into the issues just to, be a voice deeper into the code base. But when you're maintaining the code base and when you're writing stuff, it's like you have zero time for anything else. So it's a huge help so that this doesn't just grow indefinitely. So if anybody here loves Blueprint and is into it, go help out JMac and get on that repo. Help them out. Okay. So add xbind. Here are a few things I'd like input on. And this is going to be, I'm leaving out a bunch of context because you're all watching me do this, and the people who are going to be interested in this are on this chat right now. But maybe I'll fill it in later, I don't know. So here are a few things that I'd like input on. One is there a performance, are there performance implications for running safer eval inside get x attrs? In other words, is Alpine slower now that there is an eval statement, an eval run every time it checks the attributes of an element? Maybe caching is one potential answer here, but there be dragons. Okay. And now number two Number 2 is I would like input on what else? Oh, the binding thing. Is there currently this only works well when the bound directives object has function attributes, has non-arrow function attributes, because context binding, I'll say because, be more explicit, because this binding is funky with arrow functions. Would love to know if we can force the this of arrow functions reliably. Okay. And then the third thing that I want to input on, does anybody remember what that third thing was? Do transitions still work with the get x attrs dot expression, I'll say dot expression stuff. Because I'll say because expression is no longer a string, but I think it would work fine. For parsing classes and whatnot. Yeah, you know what? I bet it does break. I bet that does break. Yep, I bet it breaks. All right, so maybe we need to do, yeah, Adrian, maybe we need to wrap the execution in a with. Maybe that's the answer. So, all right, so here it is. Creating the pull request, making it a whip PR. I think we're almost there. There's just some things that we need to look a little bit deeper on. It's 10:47. Matt's out for streaming at 11. I encourage you all to go check out his stream stuff. Thank you, as always, for joining me on this sort of pretty, beautiful, yeah, it's actually blue skies and there's leaves on the trees. So Sunday or Friday morning. Thanks a lot again. I will see you on the internet. Can't talk today, huh? All right, ending the stream. Thanks everybody for hanging out.